The council chamber stretched wide and tall, its walls made of crystalline material that caught the light from a dozen different suns. Ambassador Lisa Morgan stood at the speaking platform, her hands resting on the smooth surface, as she looked out at the assembled representatives. 30 years. That was how long humanity had been part of this galactic community. 30 years of contributing, learning, and trying to prove themselves worthy among the stars. Today, she had come with a warning that could save them all. Captain Daniel Brooks stood beside her, his uniform crisp and his expression calm. He carried a data tablet filled with information that had taken human scientists 3 months to compile. Behind them, displays showed images of devastation, mathematical projections, and scattered reports from the edges of known space. Lisa took a breath and began. Honored members of the Galactic Council, we have discovered a threat approaching our region of space. Our long-range sensors have detected a massive anomaly moving at 0.7 light speed. It is not natural. It is not alive in any way we understand. It is a machine swarm, and it consumes everything in its path. The chamber fell quiet for a moment. Then, a clicking sound came from the Zentari section. Chairman Veltharn, a being that looked like a combination of crystal and light, rose from his seat. His voice echoed through the chamber with a tone that suggested amusement more than concern. Ambassador Morgan, humanity has been with us for 3 decades. In that time, you have brought us many warnings. Warnings about stellar drift, warnings about dark matter fluctuations, warnings about rogue asteroids. You see danger everywhere. Several species in the chamber made sounds that resembled laughter. Lisa felt her jaw tighten, but she kept her voice steady. Chairman, this is different. We have evidence. We have witness accounts from 3 civilizations that no longer exist. The swarm consumed them completely. Captain Brooks stepped forward and activated the holographic display. The images filled the center of the chamber with horrifying clarity. Worlds stripped bare, stations torn apart, ships broken into their component atoms. The swarm moved like a living thing, but it was pure machine. Each unit could replicate itself, using matter it consumed. Each unit adapted to weapons used against it. We estimate it will reach Council space in 6 months, Brooks said, his voice carrying the weight of military authority. That gives us time to prepare if we act now. We can fortify defenses, evacuate vulnerable populations, and coordinate a unified response. A representative from the Quellan species, a tall being covered in blue fur, spoke up. Captain Brooks, your species is known for its military focus. You have more warships per capita than any council member. Perhaps you see this as an opportunity to expand your fleet presence in council space? Lisa felt anger rise in her chest, but she pushed it down. We are offering to help. Human engineers can begin reinforcing stations immediately. Our fleet can assist with evacuations. We have technology that might slow the swarm's advance long enough to find a permanent solution. Chairman Veltharn's crystalline form seemed to brighten with what might have been contempt. Ambassador, the Council has existed for 12,000 years. We have survived threats that would have ended younger species. Our shields are powered by technologies humanity has not yet discovered. Our weapons can crack planets. Do you truly believe we need the assistance of a species that only left its home world 200 years ago? The chamber filled with sounds of agreement from various species. Lisa looked around at faces, forms, and beings that represented dozens of worlds. She had worked with many of them. She had thought some were friends. Now she saw only dismissal in their reactions. I am asking you to look at the evidence, she said, trying one more time. Our scientists have analyzed the swarm's pattern. It does not negotiate. It does not stop. It consumes and replicates. By the time it reaches your core worlds, it will number in the billions of units. Every minute we delay makes it harder to stop. A vote was called. The holographic tally appeared in the center of the chamber. Representatives cast their votes, and Lisa watched the numbers climb. When it finished, the result was clear. 47 species voted to dismiss the human warning. Only 3 voted in favor of taking action. Humanity's vote. And 2 small species that had recently joined the council. Chairman Veltharn addressed the chamber with what sounded like finality. The council has spoken. We will not cause panic based on speculation from an overcautious species. Ambassador Morgan, Captain Brooks, we thank you for your concern. However, the council's resources will not be diverted to address this phantom threat. Lisa felt something cold settle in her stomach. She had expected resistance. She had not expected complete dismissal. Chairman, please reconsider. At least allow us to begin defensive preparations in our own sectors. The council votes to prohibit any military buildup that might alarm our citizens, Veltharn replied. Your fleet movements will be restricted to standard patrol patterns. We will not have humanity using fear to gain power in council space. Captain Brooks touched Lisa's arm gently. She looked at him and saw resignation in his eyes. They had tried. They had presented everything they had, and it had not been enough. As they walked out of the chamber, Lisa heard the representatives returning to their regular business. Trade agreements, border disputes, cultural exchanges, all the normal activities of a civilization that believed itself safe. Greg Palmer, their intelligence officer, met them in the corridor. Ambassador, Captain, I have the full vote record. Only the Delari and the Hinton voted with us. Small species, limited resources. Everyone else either voted against or abstained. Did they even look at the data? Brooks asked. Some did. Most did not, Greg replied. Chairman Veltharn's office sent a message to all representatives before the session. It suggested that humanity was seeking to justify a military expansion. Lisa leaned against the wall and closed her eyes. 30 years of building relationships. 30 years of proving humanity's worth. All of it meant nothing when pride and arrogance got in the way of survival. What do we do now? Greg asked quietly. Brooks looked at Lisa. She looked back at him. They both knew what had to happen next. The council had made its choice. Now humanity would have to make its own. We send a message to Admiral Hayes, Lisa said softly. Tell him to begin the evacuation protocol. We have 6 months. We need to be gone in 5. Gone? Greg looked shocked. You mean leave the council? I mean leave council space entirely, Lisa replied. We tried to save them. They refused. We will not stay and die with them. Captain Brooks nodded slowly. We warn the Delari and the Hinton privately. Give them the same option. Anyone who wants to listen, we help. Everyone else. He trailed off. Everyone else will learn the hard way. Lisa finished. Her voice was sad but firm. We gave them the truth. What they do with it is their choice. The 3 humans walked down the corridor together, leaving the council chamber behind. Inside, the voices of dozens of species continued their debates and discussions. None of them knew that humanity had just made a decision that would change the galaxy forever. The humans were going to leave. Quietly and completely. And when the swarm arrived, the council would face it alone. 3 weeks had passed since the council rejected humanity's warning. Ambassador Lisa Morgan stood in her office aboard Station Zenith, looking out at the stars through the wide viewport. Somewhere out there, the swarm was moving closer. Every day brought it nearer to council space. Every day wasted was another day they could have been preparing. Captain Daniel Brooks entered her office with a tablet in hand. His expression told her the news was not good. The council just passed another resolution, he said, placing the tablet on her desk. They are officially prohibiting human fleet movements beyond standard patrol routes. Any ship that violates the restriction will be detained. Lisa picked up the tablet and read through the document. The language was clear and direct. Humanity was being confined to its designated sectors. The reason given was to prevent panic among council populations. But Lisa knew the real reason. The council was afraid humanity would use the threat to gain military power. They are making it impossible for us to help, she said quietly. That seems to be the intention, Brooks replied. He moved to the window and stood beside her. Admiral Hayes contacted me this morning. He wants to know if we should continue with the evacuation protocol. Lisa was quiet for a moment. She thought about the millions of humans living in council space. Colonists who had built homes on worlds shared with other species. Scientists working in joint research facilities. Merchants who traded across dozens of systems. Teachers, engineers, artists, families, all of them were in danger, and the council was preventing humanity from protecting them. Tell the Admiral to continue, she said finally. But keep it quiet. No announcements. No public statements. We evacuate our people, as if it were routine relocations. Nicole Sanders, the chief engineer, arrived a few minutes later. She looked tired, her hair pulled back in a messy tie, her uniform wrinkled from long hours of work. Ambassador, we have a problem. The Council is denying our requests to access joint defense systems. They will not let us examine the shield generators or weapon platforms. They think we are trying to steal technology, Brooks said with frustration. We helped build those systems. Nicole replied sharply. Human engineers contributed 40% of the design work on the outer stations. Now they will not even let us look at them. Well, we helped build those systems. Lisa sat down at her desk and rubbed her temples. A headache was building behind her eyes. What about our own facilities? Can we at least secure those? I have teams quietly removing human technology from shared installations, Nicole said. But we have to be careful. If the Council notices, they might accuse us of sabotage. Greg Palmer, their intelligence officer, came in without knocking. He looked excited and angry at the same time. Ambassador, you need to see this. I have been monitoring Council communications. They have data that confirms our warning. Their own long-range sensors detected the swarm 3 days ago. What? Lisa stood up quickly. They have confirmation and they said nothing? Chairman Veltharn ordered the information classified, Greg explained. There is an internal memo saying that releasing the data would validate human concerns and make the Council look foolish. They would rather pretend the threat does not exist than admit we were right. Captain Brooks slammed his fist on the desk. It was rare to see him lose his composure. They are going to let people die because of their pride. Entire worlds will be destroyed because they cannot admit they made a mistake. Lisa felt something break inside her. She had spent years believing in the Council. She had thought they were better than humanity's old governments. She had believed in the idea of species working together for common good. But now, she saw the truth. The Council was just as flawed as any human institution. Perhaps more so, because they had power without accountability. I am requesting an emergency session, she said. I will present this information to the full Council. They need to know that their own leadership is hiding the truth. The emergency session was granted, though Lisa suspected it was only because the Council wanted to appear fair. She stood once again at the speaking platform, this time with Greg's evidence displayed on the screens behind her. The memo, the sensor data, everything that proved the Council knew about the swarm and chose to hide it. Members of the Council, she began, her voice steady despite the anger burning in her chest. I stand before you with proof that your leadership has deceived you. Chairman Veltharn received confirmation of the threat we warned you about. He ordered that information hidden from the Council and from your people. The chamber erupted in noise. Some species demanded explanations. Others accused Lisa of fabricating evidence. Chairman Veltharn rose from his seat, his crystalline form glowing brighter with what looked like rage. Ambassador Morgan, you have violated classified information protocols. This is an act of espionage against the Council. This is an act of desperation, Lisa shot back. You are condemning billions of lives because you cannot admit you were wrong. The swarm is real. It is coming. And you are doing nothing to stop it. And his people wrong. The sense of self, Benai. The Council's defense capabilities are more than sufficient, Veltharn replied coldly. We do not need humanity's primitive weapons or fear-mongering to protect our worlds. What we need is for humanity to remember its place. You are junior members of this council. You do not dictate policy. Lisa looked around the chamber at all the representatives. Some looked uncomfortable. A few seemed to be reconsidering their positions. But most remained unmoved. They trusted their leadership more than they trusted humanity. Or perhaps they simply could not imagine their mighty council falling to any threat. I am making one final request, Lisa said, her voice carrying to every corner of the chamber. Allow humanity to begin fortifying the outer systems. Let us evacuate populations from the swarm's projected path. We are not asking for control. We are not asking for power. We are asking for the chance to save lives. The vote was called again. This time it was even more one-sided. 51 species voted against humanity's request. Only the Delari and the Hinton voted in favor. Humanity abstained, knowing their vote would not matter. As the session ended, Lisa walked out with Brooks beside her. She felt numb, empty. She had given everything she had, and it was not enough. What now? Brooks asked. Now we leave, Lisa replied. Contact the Delari and Hinton ambassadors privately. Tell them what we are planning. Offer them transport to human space if they want it. Anyone who will listen, we try to save. And everyone else? Lisa stopped walking and turned to face him. Everyone else has made their choice. We cannot save people who refuse to be saved. We tried, Daniel. We warned them. We showed them proof. We offered our help freely. They rejected it all. Now we have to save our own people. That night, Lisa sent an encrypted message to human leadership back in Earth's system. The message was simple and direct. The Council had refused all assistance. They were hiding information from their own people. Humanity needed to evacuate Council space completely and prepare to defend their own borders. The response came 12 hours later. It was signed by President Kate Wilson herself. The message contained one word, followed by authorization codes. Approved. The evacuation began in earnest the next day. Human merchant ships stopped arriving at Council stations. Colonists received quiet messages, telling them to pack only essentials. Research teams began concluding their projects early. Slowly, carefully, humanity started to leave. The Council barely noticed at first. And by the time they did, it would be too late to stop it. Humanity was going home, and they were not coming back. Admiral Kevin Hayes stood on the bridge of the UNS Horizon. Watching the tactical display showed dozens of ships moving through Council space. Each dot represented a human vessel carrying families, equipment, and everything humanity had built over 30 years. The evacuation was proceeding smoothly, but time was running short. They had been at it for 2 months now, and the swarm was getting closer with each passing day. Admiral, the last transport from New Seattle Colony is loading now, reported Commander Phillips from the communications station. They estimate departure in 6 hours. Good, Hayes replied. What about the research station at Helix Nebula? Already evacuated. Dr. Martinez and her team left yesterday. They took all their data and equipment. Hayes nodded. The hardest part of this operation was keeping it quiet. Every human ship leaving Council space meant questions from other species. Every empty colony drew attention. But so far, humanity had managed to maintain the illusion that nothing unusual was happening. They gave vague answers about internal reorganization. They filed the proper departure documents. They paid their docking fees and said polite goodbyes. They just did not mention they were never coming back. Captain Daniel Brooks entered the bridge with Nicole Sanders beside him. The chief engineer looked exhausted but satisfied. Admiral, we have completed removal of human technology from all joint installations. Shield generators, weapon systems, communications arrays, everything we contributed is either removed or disabled. Did the Council notice? Hayes asked. They noticed things were not working as well. Nicole replied with a slight smile. But they assumed it was normal maintenance issues. By the time they figure out what we did, we will be long gone. Hayes felt a grim satisfaction at that. The council had spent years taking credit for human innovations. They had claimed humanity's defensive improvements as their own achievements. Now they would discover just how much they had relied on human expertise. What about the civilians? Brooks asked. Are we on schedule? Most colonies are empty now, Hayes said, pulling up a status report. We have about 40,000 people left to evacuate. Ryan Miller is coordinating the final transports. Ryan Miller was on the surface of Haven's Gate, a colony world where humans had lived alongside 3 other species for 15 years. He stood in the town square, watching families load their belongings onto cargo shuttles. Children clutched toys. Adults carried boxes of memories. Everyone had been told the same thing. This was a temporary relocation for safety. Most people understood it was permanent. An elderly woman approached him, her eyes wet with tears. I built a garden here. Took me 10 years to get the soil right. I will never see it again. Will I? Ryan put a hand on her shoulder gently. I am sorry, but you will be alive to plant a new garden. That is what matters. The woman nodded and walked toward the waiting shuttle. Ryan watched her go and felt anger rise in his chest. These people had done nothing wrong. They had come to council space, believing in cooperation and peace. Now they were refugees fleeing a threat the council refused to acknowledge. On another world, Amy Chen was facing a different kind of difficulty. She ran the Human Administration on Trading Hub 7, a massive station where hundreds of species conducted business. Walking away from this station meant leaving behind millions of credits worth of property and contracts. The Quellen are asking why we are closing our businesses, her assistant said nervously. They want to know if they did something to offend us. Tell them it is an internal matter, Amy replied. Be polite. Be vague. Do not give them real answers. She watched through the office window as the last human merchant packed up his shop. The storefront that had sold earth art and music for 20 years would soon be empty. Other species would move in and take over. They would never know that humanity left to save themselves from a threat those same species refused to believe in. Back on Station Zenith, Ambassador Lisa Morgan was preparing her own departure. She stood in her office, looking at 3 decades of accumulated items. Awards from the council, photos with representatives from a dozen species, gifts from diplomatic functions. All of it felt meaningless now. Greg Palmer entered carrying a small box. Ambassador, these are the classified documents you will need. Everything else has been purged from our systems. Have the Delari and Hinton confirmed their evacuation plans? Lisa asked. Yes. Both species are sending ships to rendezvous with our fleet at the border. They are bringing their entire populations. About 3 million people combined. Lisa felt relieved at that. At least some lives would be saved. And they understand the terms? Once they enter human space, they cannot return to the council. They understand. They also wanted me to thank you. They said humanity showed them more kindness in warning them than the council showed in 30 years of membership. Lisa packed the last of her personal items and took one final look at her office. So many meetings had happened here. So many negotiations and compromises. She had believed in the work. She had believed in the dream of species working together. That dream was about to die, and there was nothing she could do to save it. Captain Brooks was on his final inspection tour of human facilities when he encountered a Zentari official. The crystalline being blocked his path with an expression that might have been suspicion. Captain Brooks, there are rumors that humans are leaving council space. Is this true? Brooks kept his face neutral. Humans conduct regular fleet rotations. There is nothing unusual occurring. And thanks for watching. And I see this fleet round a sea. There is nothing unusual occurring. Entire colonies are empty. Research stations are abandoned. Your merchant ships have not arrived in weeks. Internal reorganization, Brooks replied smoothly. It is a human matter, and does not concern the council. The official studied him for a long moment. Chairman Veltharn believes you are running away. He thinks humanity is fleeing because you are afraid of your own false warning. Brooks felt anger flash through him, but kept it controlled. The chairman may believe whatever he wishes. Now, if you will excuse me, I have duties to attend to. He walked past the official, without another word. Let them think humanity was cowardly. Let them believe whatever made them feel superior. In a few weeks, they would learn the truth. Admiral Hayes received the final reports 4 months after the evacuation began. Every human civilian was out of council space. Every soldier had withdrawn to the border. Every piece of human technology had been removed or disabled. Humanity's presence in the council, built over 30 years, had been erased in 4 months. Only one task remained. Hayes composed a message and sent it on all council frequencies. His voice was calm and emotionless as he recorded it. This is Admiral Kevin Hayes of the United Nations Fleet. As of today, humanity formally withdraws from the Galactic Council. All human personnel have departed council space. All human assets have been removed. We leave behind the infrastructure we built, intact and undamaged. We take only what is ours. To the Galactic Council, we offer one final warning. The machine swarm will arrive in 14 days. Evacuate your worlds now. Retreat to defensive positions. Prepare for an enemy that does not negotiate. This is our last message. We will not contact you again. You are on your own. He ended the transmission and turned to his crew. Set course for Earth space. Take us home. The fleet turned away from council space and began the journey back to human territory. Behind them, council stations continued their normal operations. Most species barely noticed the humans were gone. Those who did notice assumed humanity had run away in fear. In 14 days, they would discover how wrong they were. Chairman Veltharn stood at the center of the council chamber, his crystalline form glowing with satisfaction. The humans were gone. After 30 years of their constant warnings and military preparations, they had finally left. Good riddance. The council could now return to proper civilization without the primitive species constantly trying to inject fear into every discussion. The humans have been gone for 13 days, announced Council Secretary Horvek. A being with 6 eyes and green skin. All human sectors are empty. They left their stations intact, but removed most technology. They ran like cowards, said Representative Quillan of the Quellan species. When their false warning did not work, they fled in shame. Several council members made sounds of agreement. Veltharn felt vindicated. He had been right about humanity all along. They were warmongers who saw threats everywhere. Now that the council had called their bluff, they had retreated to their little corner of space. We should celebrate this moment, Veltharn declared. The council is stronger without those who spread fear and panic. Let us organize a gathering to mark this new era. The celebration was planned for the following evening. Representatives from all member species would attend. There would be speeches about the council's wisdom and strength, about how they had resisted humanity's attempts to militarize council space. It would be a perfect demonstration of why the council had survived for 12,000 years. But that celebration never happened. On the morning of the 14th day, alarms began sounding across the outer rim of council space. Station Deep Watch, positioned at the edge of explored territory, sent a frantic transmission before going silent. Station Guardian 5 reported massive energy readings approaching at incredible speed. Then it too went dark. In the Council Defense Center, Admiral Krentok watched his displays with growing horror. What is that? Fender. 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 The tactical screens showed something that should not exist. A cloud of objects, numbering in the millions. Each one the size of a small ship. They moved in perfect coordination, flowing around obstacles like water, and everything they touched simply disappeared. Deploy the defense fleet, Veltharn ordered, when he arrived at the command center. Destroy. Whatever that is. 600 warships moved to intercept the approaching swarm. These were vessels that had defended Council space for centuries. Their weapons could crack planets. Their shields could withstand supernovas. They were the pride of the Council's military might. The first ships engaged the swarm at maximum range. Energy weapons lanced out, striking the machine units. Dozens were destroyed in the initial volley. For a moment, the Council officers allowed themselves to feel hope. Then the swarm adapted. The next wave of energy weapons was absorbed by the machines. Kinetic weapons were caught and consumed. The machines began to replicate, using the matter from destroyed defense ships. For every machine killed, 2 more appeared. Within 3 hours, 600 warships were reduced to scattered atoms. Not a single ship escaped to report what they had witnessed. "How is this possible?" Veltharn demanded. "Our shields, our weapons. They should have stopped this easily." A young Zentari technician looked up from his station with fear in his eyes. "Chairman, I have reviewed the tactical data. This swarm matches exactly the specifications the humans provided 4 months ago. Every characteristic, every behavior. They were right." Veltharn felt something cold settle in his core. He looked at the displays, showing the swarm consuming station after station, world after world. The humans had warned them. They had provided detailed information. And the Council had dismissed it all as paranoid fiction. "Contact the humans," Veltharn ordered. "Tell them we need assistance immediately." The communications officer tried for several minutes before shaking his head. "Chairman, there is no response. All channels to human space return automated messages. They say Council authority prohibited human intervention, and no further communications will be accepted. Override it. Use the emergency protocols." I tried. The messages just loop back. They are not listening. Panic began to spread through Council space. Species that had spent centuries in peace suddenly faced an enemy they could not fight. Evacuation orders were issued. But there was nowhere to go. The swarm moved faster than most civilian ships could travel. And it was everywhere at once, seeming to multiply with each passing hour. Representative Quilon arrived at the command center, his blue fur matted with stress. "Chairman, my home world is in the swarm's path. We need to evacuate 3 billion people. Where do we send them?" Veltharn had no answer. The evacuation routes all led deeper into Council space, where the swarm would eventually reach. The only safe direction was toward human territory, and the humans had made clear they would not respond to Council communications. "What about the defense platforms the humans helped build?" someone asked. "Can we activate those?" A Quellan engineer checked the systems and groaned. "The humans removed key components when they left. The platforms have power, but no targeting systems, no fire control. They are useless." "They sabotaged our defenses," Quilon shouted. "This is revenge for us dismissing their warning." But the young Zentari technician spoke up again, his voice quiet. "No, sir. I have checked the logs. The humans left detailed instructions on how to operate everything. They removed only the components they had contributed themselves. If we had maintained our own systems properly, we would not need their parts. They did not sabotage us. We just relied on them more than we realized." The truth of that statement hung in the air like a weight. The Council had spent years taking credit for human innovations. They had used human technology while claiming superiority. Now they were discovering that they had become dependent on the very species they had looked down upon. Station Zenith, the heart of Council government, started evacuation procedures. But even as ships departed, everyone knew it was probably too late. The swarm was spreading across Council space like a plague, consuming everything in its path. Veltharn stood alone in the command center, watching his civilization collapse on the displays around him. He thought about the human ambassador, standing in this very station 4 months ago. She had tried to warn them. She had offered help freely. She had shown them proof and given them time to prepare. And he had called her paranoid. He had accused humanity of fear-mongering. He had convinced the council that their superiority would protect them. Now his people were dying by the billions, and the humans were safe behind their own borders. He had seen the edge of human space on the tactical displays. The swarm had reached their territory and simply stopped. Something was holding it back there. The humans had technology that could stop the swarm, or at least slow it down. Technology they had offered to share. Veltharn's last thought before the swarm reached Station Zenith was a simple one. The humans had not been afraid of the swarm. They had been afraid for the council, and the council had mistaken that fear for weakness. The station's lights flickered and died as the machines began tearing it apart. Veltharn's consciousness faded, knowing that his pride had doomed them all. Admiral Kevin Hayes stood in the war room on Earth, watching the displays that showed council space being consumed. Each red sector represented worlds that no longer existed. Stations that had stood for thousands of years were now nothing but scattered atoms. Billions of lives had ended in the span of 2 weeks. It should have felt like victory. The council had dismissed humanity's warnings. They had treated humans as inferior for 30 years. Now, they were paying the price for their arrogance. But Hayes felt no satisfaction, only sadness and waste. "Admiral, we have ships approaching our border," reported Commander Phillips. "They are council vessels. Civilian transports mostly. They are requesting asylum." "How many?" Hayes asked. 47 ships so far. More appearing on long-range sensors. They are fleeing the swarm. Hayes took a breath and made a decision. "Contact President Wilson. Tell her we need guidance on refugee protocols, and send rescue ships to assist any vessels that are damaged." President Kate Wilson arrived at the war room an hour later. She was a short woman with gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. She studied the tactical displays in silence for several minutes before speaking. "How many made it out?" she asked. "Current estimates suggest less than 5% of council population escaped," Hayes replied. Most species did not have time to evacuate. The swarm moved faster than their projections showed. "Because they waited too long to start evacuating," Wilson said quietly. "We told them 4 months in advance. They could have saved billions if they had listened." Ambassador Lisa Morgan entered the war room with Captain Daniel Brooks beside her. Both looked tired but determined. "Madam President, we need to make a decision about the refugees. Some of them are the same people who mocked us and denied our warning." Wilson nodded. "I know. I have been receiving messages from my cabinet. Some want to turn the refugees away. They say it is justice for how the council treated us." "And what do you think?" Brooks asked. Wilson walked to the large viewport and looked out at Earth below. "I think that if we turn away refugees out of revenge, we become exactly what they accused us of being. We become the monsters they feared. That is not who we are." "So we help them?" Lisa asked. "We help the ones who escaped, but we do it on our terms. They need to understand that humanity is not their servant. We are not here to clean up their mistakes. We offer asylum to those who want it, but they follow our rules in our space." The first refugee ships arrived at Earth's orbital station that evening. Among them were the Delari and Hinton, the 2 species who had voted with humanity in the council. Their entire populations had survived because they trusted the human warning. They entered human space as friends and allies. Other species came as well: Quellan, Zentari, and dozens more. They came with nothing but the clothes they wore and the trauma of watching their civilizations end. Some were humble. Some were still proud, even in defeat. All of them were alive only because they had managed to escape at the last moment. Ryan Miller was assigned to coordinate refugee settlement. He met with representatives from each species, working out housing and resources. It was difficult work. These people had lost everything. Their worlds were gone. Their governments had collapsed. Many were angry, grieving, and frightened. "Why are you helping us?" asked a Quellan elder. "We did not believe you. We called you cowards. Ryan looked at the elderly being with compassion. Because you are alive and in need. That is enough. On the border between human and former council space, Captain Brooks commanded a defensive line. The swarm had reached human territory and was testing their defenses, but unlike council shields and weapons, human technology held. How are we stopping them when the council could not? Asked a young officer on the bridge. Brooks pulled up technical displays. The humans who warned the council did not just detect the swarm. We studied it for months. We developed specific countermeasures, weapons that adapt faster than the machines can. Shields that rotate frequencies constantly. The council could have had all of this if they had listened. The swarm pushed against human defenses for 3 days before stopping. The machines seemed to recognize that advancing further would cost more resources than they would gain. They remained at the border, consuming the last remnants of council space, but they did not enter human territory. Nicole Sanders worked around the clock maintaining the defense grid. She had barely slept in a week, but she refused to leave her post. If we show any weakness, the swarm will exploit it. We hold the line, or we die. But the line held. Humanity's preparations, the technology they had offered to share with the council, proved effective. Not perfect, but enough. The swarm was contained at the border. In Geneva, Ambassador Lisa Morgan stood before a gathering of human leadership and refugee representatives. The room was tense. Decisions needed to be made about the future. We have the capability to push back the swarm, Lisa said, her voice carrying through the silent room. Our weapons can destroy the machines faster than they can replicate. If we commit our full fleet, we could potentially clear sections of former council space. Why would we do that? Asked a human general. Our borders are secure. A Delari representative spoke up, his voice hesitant. There are still survivors in isolated pockets. Stations that were protected by natural phenomena. Small colonies. The swarm has not reached yet. They have perhaps weeks before they are found. The room fell silent. Everyone knew what he was asking. Humanity could mount rescue missions. They could save thousands, maybe millions more. But it would cost human lives. Human resources. And for what? To save people who had refused to save themselves? President Wilson stood. We will mount limited rescue operations for survivors we can confirm. We send our ships into the swarm zone with proper protection. We save who we can. But we do not attempt to reclaim council space. That is gone. We focus on survival and building something new. It was not a perfect solution. It would not save everyone. But it was the right thing to do. Over the following months, human rescue ships pulled survivors from dying stations and hidden colonies. Some were grateful. Others were resentful that humanity had not done more. But all of them were alive because humanity chose mercy over revenge. 6 months after the swarm's arrival, Lisa stood in what had been her office on Station Zenith. The station was not destroyed, but it was empty. The swarm had taken everything of value and moved on. She walked through the silent corridors where dozens of species had once conducted business and made decisions. She found the council chamber, still intact but lifeless. The speaking platform where she had made her final plea stood empty. She touched its surface and felt a deep sadness. We tried to save them, Captain Brooks said, appearing beside her. We gave them every chance. I know, Lisa replied, but I still wish we could have done more. We did everything we could. The rest was their choice. They left the station together and returned to their ship. As they pulled away, Lisa took one last look at the empty structure. 30 years of hope and cooperation, ended by pride and arrogance. The council had believed themselves superior to every threat. They had paid for that belief with their civilization. Humanity had tried to save them, had warned them, had offered help. When all of that was refused, humanity had made the hardest choice possible. They had walked away and let the council face the consequences of its decisions. Now humanity stood at the edge of what had been council space, holding back the swarm, offering shelter to refugees, and building a new future. They had not sought this role. They had not wanted to be proven right. But they would face it with the same determination they had shown from the beginning. The council was gone. Humanity remained. And in the end, that was not victory. It was simply survival.